welcome in week 14 of the Bold Bald Breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. I am Mike Chico Borman, host of the Chico Borman Show, which we air Monday through Friday, noon to 2 here on Big Play. He is Nick Shook, and he is a very popular guy in NFL circles, very revered in NFL circles. Wow. He's with NFL.com and the NFL Network. Does a great job breaking down games, so well, in fact, that we decided we needed to have him here on a weekly basis, and thus, here he is. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic. I don't think I've ever been spoken so highly of in my life. I now feel as if I need to double back and apologize to everyone for being referred to as revered, but here we are.
I think revered, Bohm, would you agree, held in high esteem? Is that?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I think revered is very justifiably warranted in this case.
I have long operated under the naive assumption that if I'm not in the room, no one's speaking of me or even thinking of me. For a long time, it's just the way I've operated. The first time I ever thought, oh my God, somebody talked about me behind my back, I was blown away. I was rattled. Like my whole worldview was rattled.
Now, did you think it was poorly speaking of you, or?
Well, of course, that's the first way is poorly, but
always,
I never think about the positive side either. I think I just exist in my own world, nothing.
Same here.
Beyond this,
same here.
Personal space, which is a debatable number, by the way. You know, spatial awareness, especially in airports, people struggle with that. But outside of that,
yeah, and it can be negative at times. Last 2 weeks, it's kind of been a little negative around here as the Cleveland Browns dropped another one, 36-19 to the LA Rams. So 7-5 are the Browns. They will get set to take on the hobbled, more on that in a moment, Jacksonville Jaguars, who come into Cleveland Browns Stadium at 1:00 p.m. this Sunday afternoon. Nick, I guess let's start here with the with what I thought was a good takeaway, my optimistic takeaway from Sunday's game, and that is, my God, if Joe Flacco, now I know there's a consistency thing to this too, and you got to follow it up, and we'll get into that, but if Joe Flacco can look that polished and that, I don't want to act like he lit the world on fire, but for a guy that really hasn't played a whole lot, been throwing around with a few friends, maybe his kids, he was very, very impressive considering the circumstances. The interception was bad. There's no getting around that. But I feel like as long as he's healthy, I don't care about DTR's health, and nothing against DTR. It's got to be Joe Flacco moving forward, right or wrong.
Yeah, that was probably the most noticeable takeaway, even from the first drive. And I think it makes sense in theory, because if you think about Kevin Stefanski's background, he came to the Browns from Minnesota, where he coached Kirk Cousins, to a really solid output, right? Every year they were a contender. They were perennial playoff contenders. They've scored upset wins in the past, even with guys like Case Keenum. He has a background with that type of quarterback, and Joe Flacco best fits that mold of those on this roster. Now, they shifted away from that type of mold when they moved on from Baker Mayfield, who's not Kirk Cousins, who's more risky, and so on and so forth. But when they went and got Deshaun Watson, they filled that quarterback room with similar quarterbacks. Now, it's no surprise that he found success with Jacoby Brissett last year, because that is kind of closer to Kirk Cousins. It's kind of the middle point. The happy medium between Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins is Jacoby Brissett. So to see a quarterback who trends more toward the side of Kirk Cousins come in and find success in his first game made a lot of sense, because it fits Stefanski's background. Now, the surprise was the fact that Joe Flacco looked like he hadn't just got off the couch, like he'd been playing football for the last 6 months, and he'd been in this offense for years. That is the veteran ability and the knowledge and the experience that he brings to the table. But the biggest surprise to me, and Mark Sanchez was glowing about this throughout that game, was the arm talent, the ability that Flacco still had in that arm, which at 38 years old, you only see that in guys like Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers. So that was super encouraging. It was also probably shocking to Browns fans to see Joe Flacco come in and in his first game look like the best thing the Browns have had at quarterback all year, save for Deshaun Watson's last couple games.
Makes
I don't
you
know.
Wonder.
That's kind of a low bar. Yeah, it does make you wonder a little bit. But if he can, you're right. Consistency is a thing. Sample size, one game. That's all it is one game. but it was against a team that's coached pretty well. In fact, they ended up kind of out-coaching the Browns. We'll get to that later.
Yes.
But to see him come out there and perform and renew that rapport he had with Elijah Moore from their time spent together with the Jets, it made you wonder, and I texted my buddy this last night, if they had Amari Cooper for the whole game, they might win that game because he would have another option to throw to. So reason for optimism amid a 2-game losing streak. But now the question is, that was in a dome. It's technically a dome. They have a roof with some open airways, but it's a dome for all intents and purposes. And they played in Denver the week before when he was in street clothes. Can they come back here where the weather's been miserable for the last week or two and do something similar? Because, again, this is a team that does not have Nick Chubb. And Jerome Ford, as well as he's played, can you find that success at home? Because suddenly, after losing 2 straight, the Browns desperately need a win, and they got a tough opponent coming up.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence and that injury last night here in a moment. But, the other thing that Sanchez was harping on, and I, at first I was like, man, he's really hit. But the more I watched, Mark Sanchez was right about just carrying out fakes.
Yeah.
Like play action fakes. I mean, he literally, you saw it, I know. He literally had them backpedaling. He had them coming up. He had them, they were off balance.
And that's the experience.
And that's, yeah. And it's, and even experienced guys, certain guys can carry out the play action fake and really sell it better than others. But I thought those were the little things, I guess, to me, where I was like, wow, he looks so smooth going through the process.
I was just surprised how well he operated Kevin Stefanski's offense with such a short amount of time. And I think that, again, just leans on the years that he's played in the NFL. And especially in different systems in recent years. He's been with the Eagles. He's been with the Jets. He's bounced around. He was with the Broncos before he left, or after he left Baltimore. His first stop was in Denver before he got hurt. We've kind of forgotten about him. And it does a little bit of egg on my face. I'll take full blame for this because I've been getting texts since Deshaun got hurt in week 3 and he wasn't able to play in week 4. Can we go get somebody? And then we've said the same thing. This is not Madden. You cannot plug and play a guy. But in rare instances, you have a quarterback with so much experience and so much ability that you can give him a couple weeks and then put him out there and he can find success, just not to that level, which makes you wonder, was it a fluke? Is he going to be a bad quarterback the rest of the year? Were you all just teased? We don't know, and we really can't say that definitively until he plays again. But there is plenty of reason for optimism that this offense can be not quite resurrected, but salvaged enough to win football games. The key, though, is that defense has got to be better.
So we had our noticeable optimistic takeaway. Now for the noticeable, oh my gosh, takeaway, as Nick alluded to on the defensive side of the ball. I said yesterday, we can have this all. We can talk about the elite defense, and no, not right now. It's not, and certainly not when Denzel Ward is out and Myles Garrett is compromised. He was basically reduced to a third down specialist. Nick, if those two guys are not able to be vintage Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett, I'm not going to say the defense is in trouble, but the defense being elite or playing elite a lot is why we feel good about covering up some of the wounds for the offense. If they play like that, and they are just an average to good defense, this is going to be a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that there were stretches where you had to be proud of what they did. They forced a lot of 3-and-outs. It became a defensive game after some early scoring, but it was painfully noticeable how Myles Garrett was not at 100%. And there was a play in particular where Kyron Williams got the ball on the left side, and Garrett had him in the backfield, and he couldn't finish the play, and it ended up being a positive gain. Where I'm sitting there thinking he's not even close to 100%. It wasn't just that they took away his pass rushing ability, because this is a Rams offensive line that was a disaster last year that has been much better this year. Has been a big reason why they've been competitive and why Matthew Stafford's played much better this year is because he's had some more time to throw. And there's also a coaching element that I'll get into as well. But Myles Garrett just was so clearly not healthy that he was a non-factor, pretty much a non-factor. He was not the game-wrecking guy that you expect to see every week that makes this defense what it is. Not having Denzel Ward out there to match up with their top receiver and in certain situations put them on the most vulnerable area. That was also a big issue. You combine the two, rush not getting home, defensive backs not as good as you expect them to be, and you have situations where they convert a 3rd and 20 and lead to a touchdown. And it changes the game. You have situations where they're able to get 3rd downs late in the game when you desperately need to stop because you lack that force that changes everything for you. Not to mention the fact that Zadarius Smith was playing on a rotational basis. He was not in on every down. He's still dealing with some injuries himself. They just looked way less effective. They were more average than anything, which was disappointing. Now, this is also a trend. They have not played well on the road as well as they have at home. Luckily, they're coming home this week. But it was kind of a glaring issue that has me concerned for the Browns because, look, we're at that point now. It's December. It's separation season. Pretenders and contenders go separate ways in this month. And right now the Browns are in that middle area, having lost 2 straight, going from 7-3 to 7-5, where you look at those wild card standings and they're right in the thick of it. And there's some teams that are 6-6 that are right behind them that are playing better football than them right now. So the defense has to step up. And I don't think you get Myles Garrett healthier. I think that you hope that Denzel Ward comes back and you hope that playing at home helps you. But it's got to be a collective effort. And looking at the way Sunday went, it felt like Jim Schwartz was not operating with a full deck. And that's why they lost that game.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that's where we go from here now as far as the conversation. I felt like, and I know you wrote about this in terms of, actually you said it last week when we previewed the Rams. You said, Sean McVay, this is,
damn good coach.
Yeah, damn good coach. He's gonna have something in store for the Browns. Then when we find out that Denzel Ward is going to be out again, Myles Garrett, well, really on Friday, even going into Sunday, we didn't know what to expect. We just knew he was going to play. It was clear, and I know you wrote about it for NFL.com and the takeaways from what we learned. Cover 2 looks like they were just
leaving Sione Takitaki in coverage and deep, cover 2 sink and expecting him to run with Puka Nacua, you're always going to get beat on those plays. But it's McVay capitalizing on the looks that you gave. At one point, I texted my buddy, I said, can they get out of cover 2? Because they're getting cooked in cover 2. The Demarcus Robinson touchdown and the pickup on 2nd and 20 was against cover 2 looks as well as the Puka Nacua 70-yard touchdown. And it's uncharacteristic of a Browns defense that you've expected to allow a low total yardage, stop them, prevent you get them behind the sticks, and the defense has been very good this year, but they were not on Sunday. And I think it's because of the absence of those guys. But you talk about McVay, and it felt like he was just one step ahead of Schwartz. Not the entire game, because there was that lull where the Rams couldn't get anything going offensively. But in the key moments, McVay had an answer for whatever Schwartz was doing. And again, I go back to the not having a full deck because, look, people have looked at Denzel Ward's contract in this city, and they've thought he's not performing up to that task for a lot of the time because he doesn't get a ton of interceptions. But defensive back play is so much more than that, and it becomes painfully apparent just how valuable he is to your team when he's not out there. Right. He is undoubtedly worth that money. Myles Garrett is worth that money, but when they're not healthy, suddenly you realize the difference between star player and average player, and Garrett kind of becomes closer to an average player. Granted, he's being double teamed because I'm watching him closely because I'm like, he's not making a difference. Oh, he's facing 2 blocks there. He doesn't have the strength and the ability to get through that and make a difference still. But when they're not at 100%, that's when everything changes for them. So you have to hope that Ward comes back because that'll be a big boost. And you have to hope that you can get the most out of Myles Garrett and make more of a team effort up front. But again, credit to Sean McVay, who in every situation just had an answer for whatever he thought the Browns are doing. It's great tape study, great game plan, and really just an effective implementation of situational coaching that has made the Rams into what they are, and in a competitive team with a roster that lacks talent. I mean, if you look at them on paper, that cupboard is not fully stocked, and yet there they are at 500, and there they are staying right in the thick of the NFC playoff race. I think it was a shocking outcome for Browns fans who looked at the Rams in their full season and thought, oh, this is a win. Even a month ago, I would have said, yeah, that's a win. But this is
Same
the NFL.
With Denver.
Yeah.
I mean, a month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
the margin in the NFL is so slim that when you're not at 100%, you can lose games like this, especially when you're on the road. And the Browns, by the way, have not won in the Pacific time zone in like decades.
And they mixed it up this week.
Yeah.
They tried to stay out there, which I thought it was a good idea.
It was a great idea.
I thought it was a really good idea.
UCLA's got a fantastic facility built for it. They literally designed it to host NFL teams when they come out there on trips like that. They took full advantage of it. But in the end, the result was the same.
Week 14 of the Bold Ball Breakdown. That result, of course, 36-19 loss for the Browns to the Rams, dropping them to 7-5. They've lost 2 in a row. They get set to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars this Sunday at Cleveland Browns Stadium. One more thing on the defensive side of the ball, a couple more things. when Denzel Ward doesn't play, I mean, as you said, his impact and people, you got to not just look at interceptions because I think he's playing his best football right now. As he's played in his career.
Yeah.
What happens though is, and we talked about this in the Denver game. You saw Greg Newsome go to the outside. He's obviously better in the inside as a slot corner
When they're fully healthy, yeah.
Right. So everybody kind of it's not that you don't have any talent. You still have talent, but that talent is having to play a position where they're not as strong. I thought MJ Emerson, and he's a guy that I really like. You know, they pointed it out at one point. I think Sanchez did. I mean, this is a guy known for his physicality, and he wasn't getting any kind of push or any kind of hands on Puka Nacua coming off the line of scrimmage. Like, that was even surprising to me.
And I think this actually points to part of the pre-draft process that I hate the most, which is when I go to the combine every year, I sit back and I watch the drills and I put together this all-combine team, and it's more on drills than measurables. If you have a stupid good measurables performance where your numbers are off the charts, you're Jordan Davis, you're going to make the list. But it's more about the drills because I think that's what translates the most. And oftentimes in this pre-draft process, we overlook guys who end up being playmakers because we look at their measurables and say, oh, they're average. But average doesn't matter that much in the NFL if you can do other things really well. And Puka Nacua is much like Cooper Kupp in that he's a great route runner, and he's just savvy at finding the soft spots in defenses. And I think that against a guy like Nacua, Emerson will struggle because he's young. I think that Emerson has a ton of talent, a ton of potential, but without Ward on the other side and without the full strength of the defense there to help you out, you do get a little exposed. I don't think it's necessarily an indictment of him as a player. I think it's more about a bad situation for him against a good offensive coach who knows exactly how to use the talent that he has. But it bothers me that a lot of GMs end up overlooking guys like a Nacua, like even a Tank Dell, who unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury on Sunday, but he was another guy I was a huge fan of at the Combine because you watch his route running in the drills, I'm like, that kid's going to be a catch-and-run specialist. He's going to make a ton of plays. Everybody overlooks him. He ends up going to Houston. He has a great rookie year. It's not that, we make it too complicated. We focus too much on the numbers. And so I think it's a credit to the Rams and Les Snead for identifying some talent and adding them, in a good spot in the draft, and also pairing him with a coach who knows exactly how to maximize that ability and a quarterback who knows how to throw him open and get him in certain spots. And against a team and an organization like that, most defenses are going to struggle when they don't have their best players who can get home on the pass rush and force them into uncomfortable situations. We talked about it last week. What was the number one thing? You got to get after the quarterback. They did not get after Matt Stafford, and that's what allowed them to flourish and win that game.
What did you make of overall the game plan, the execution of the game plan from Kevin Stefanski?
I thought the opening script was fantastic, which is not unlike Kevin Stefanski. He does have great scripts. Some of the situational play calling and asking Flacco to kind of air it out, which I don't know if that was so much Stefanski as it was Flacco just letting it rip. I have some numbers for that later. That was a little bit unwise. Wasn't the smartest way to go about it, but again, you kind of had to make the defense respect the arm. I get it because that opened up the running game a little bit for Jerome Ford. It's more of the same from Stefanski. I think the one thing he didn't do was get too cute, which I appreciated. They didn't take the risks that they've taken in recent weeks that have hurt them tremendously. They played within themselves, and I thought overall he did a pretty good job. I think it was pretty telling that they went for it on fourth down in the fourth quarter instead of punting it away with all three timeouts, because I think that's kind of that told you what
2-minute warning coming.
And
so essentially 4.
Yeah, they told you what they thought about how the defense was playing that day. We got to go get this first down right now. And I'm not going to drill Stefanski for that. I agreed. I was like, you have to go for it here because your defense just isn't playing well enough. But overall, not a bad coaching performance from him. I think he was just operating much like Jim Schwartz with a less than fully stacked deck and trying to make the best of it.
So these remaining 5 games, Browns sit at 7-5, as we said. I think right now, if it ended, they'd be in the 60, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right now, yeah.
So the 5 games remaining, they've got a couple of home games coming up. Jacksonville, we mentioned, the Chicago Bears. Then they go on the road to Houston to take on the Texans.
Tough.
That will not be an easy affair. Home to the Jets. They've got even more drama now. Zach Wilson. I don't want to go in. I'm just gonna get hurt. So you got the Jets at home, and then you go on the road to the Bengals, who I guess we can bring it up now, Nick, quickly. I know you covered that game for NFL.com, the Bengals Monday night win, and Jake Browning looked – talk about Joe Flacco looking good. Jake Browning looked fantastic last night for the Cincinnati Bengals, and all of a sudden they're able to pull out a win. Trevor Lawrence goes down.
He was the 10th quarterback to throw for 350 or more yards and finished with a completion percentage over 85% in NFL in the Super Bowl era on Monday night. Like the 10th. And every other guy on that list is basically a Hall of Famer. And then there's Jake Browning, a guy who I have not been a fan of since his days at Washington just because I thought he was very mid, just very average at quarterback. I watched him play against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, his last collegiate game, and it all stood up. I was like, yeah, he's okay, but he's nothing special. He comes in there, and we talk about how well Sean McVay coached up that game against the Browns for the Rams. Zach Taylor did an equally, if not more impressive job of scheming to his quarterback's strengths in the Monday night game against the Jaguars. They did a fantastic job of entering the game and focusing on the run, softening up that pass rush that has been devastating against certain opponents this year, and making the Jaguars respect the run, which then bought Browning time to operate, which then bought him the ability to operate out of the play action. There was a lot of naked bootlegs, going to the play side, going with the flow of the offense, finding tight ends coming over the side.
Which was by design. And
yes,
like you
absolutely.
Said,
and all of that combination then opened up the offense to be able to take shots with Jamar Chase and find guys, whether it was short passes or it was intermediate passes. It really allowed them to operate the offense at its full capacity with a quarterback who's not Joe Burrow. And I think that the football world was rightfully shocked to see the result last night and to see Jake Browning play that well. But so much credit is due to Zach Taylor for scheming up a fantastic situation for his quarterback to thrive. And I think that it's the latest example of true coaching ability, because when you have a franchise quarterback, it can cover up a lot of coaching errors. But when you don't have one, you are exposed, and you are basically put right there in front of everybody in the spotlight, and you are given the chance to prove whether you're a good enough coach to be able to overcome that or if you're going to succumb to that. We've seen the Jets succumb to that this year with no Aaron Rodgers. We've seen other teams struggle without their starting quarterback. But then we've seen the Colts with Shane Steichen do a great job with Gardner Minshew, and Zach Taylor do a great job with Jake Browning, and the list goes on. You can go all the way down it.
Let me run down this list because this is incredible. And this is
Minnesota,
one of those,
Josh Dobbs.
This is one of those that I feel like we do this every year, but this even feels Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Richardson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Pickett's been in and out multiple times and looks like he's going to miss multiple games now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there's and we can talk about all the reasons. Some of them are fluke injuries. Some of them are just injuries in general because you don't have the ramp up that we're used to seeing years and years ago.
Or bad protection. Derek Carr's been hurt twice this year. He's currently in a situation where they're trying to decide whether he's going to play this week or not. They've had to go to Jameis Winston multiple times.
I hate to defend Zach Wilson, Nick, but if
I'll defend him. Jets fans hate me for it, but I'll defend him.
I would not want to play behind that.
No, absolutely not.
That's the other thing. When people were talking about Rodgers, and I think a lot of this was just Rodgers wanted to have his name out there and all, whatever.
Yeah.
He's in the news, and now he's not. But that was one of the topics that I'm sitting there going, am I missing something? He's still coming back behind what was already bad, now worse offensive line. Why in God's name would he want to do that with nothing on the line? But to Zach Wilson, I know he's taking heat from, I don't know how this whole thing leaked out, that he had a conversation.
It's New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. But I'm going to say you can't say what he said. At least you don't want your teammates and everybody else to find out. But behind closed doors, if I was Zach Wilson, I'd be saying the exact same thing. I don't want to go out there against that with that line.
I think you have a quarterback who's been benched twice in the last 2 years, who has a crisis of confidence, understandably so, and probably feels like his days in New York are numbered.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, because the Jets have decided to go down the path of no return, which is, all right, we're done with you. We're going to see what else we have in Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian. And they realize, oh, that's actually worse. It's actually a team problem, not necessarily Zach. Hey, Zach, would you like to play again? We've realized you're still our best player. And he's like, man, screw you guys. You guys gave up on me.
Right.
You put me in a bad situation. You dragged my name through the mud. You gave up on me. And oh, surprise, surprise, we suck as a team. It's not just me. I'm not going to play for you. Why would I risk my health when I'm probably going to be on a different team next year? It's not a team player mindset, but this is pro sports, and your best asset is your health and your ability to perform. And you got to protect that. So I can't blame him at all. And I also, Jets fans hate me for defending him. I've gotten heat from this from my colleagues.
Well, now are you defending because you think he's good, or because you think like?
No, I know the situation's bad, and he's trying to make the best of the situation.
Okay.
He makes some bad decisions, but like it's like trying to climb uphill without shoes. I mean, like he's got his feet are gonna freeze. It's Everest. He's gonna get frostbite, and he knows it, and he's still being asked to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that in watching his games, there's been times where he's been able to make positive gains out of nothing. Usually it's scrambling. It's not usually throwing the football. He's had glimpses of quality play. Usually at the end of games when maybe they have one last shot, that they beat the Giants that way. I felt like he was being unfairly maligned. Not saying he's great, but he was being unfairly maligned for being put in a bad situation and being asked to make a miracle out of it. And I also know that Tim Boyle was never going to be any better, and Trevor Siemian was never going to be any better.
Think about this. Not to go off on a tangent here. We'll get back to the Browns.
We're pretty much there already.
Yeah, it's all right though. It's an interesting. To me, it's a very interesting topic now because it's blown up and
it relates to the Browns too.
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of. And Joe Flacco was there last year, but like I think of this Jets team, and we have to remember like this was going to be Zach Wilson's reset year. Like, look, you just sit back and watch. We're not giving up on you. And I really, truly believe they weren't. But they knew that, his confidence was shot. His teammates' confidence in him was shot. So he had a ways to go. So it was like, here comes Rodgers. This is a perfect scenario. You'll be able to sit and learn, and you're just not ready right now. And then all of a sudden, 4 plays in, dude, yeah, we believe in you.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. You went and got Rodgers the offseason. That was your whole thing was if you ain't got haters, you ain't popping, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Saleh's talking big, and then all of a sudden you
I say
lose the
that
guy
all the
that
time.
gave you all the confidence. Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah.
That's actually your mantra.
One
You
of my
write it on
lines,
the wall.
yeah.
It's like, what know your why on the mirror. Yours is if you ain't got haters, you ain't popping. Yeah, that's Chico Borman special right there.
That's right.
I think that and we've talked about this, I think, at length throughout the season because Rodgers has been out since 4 plays into the first game. But it's a mistake on the part of the Jets front office to believe that Zach Wilson was just going to become a better quarterback purely by osmosis, just being around Aaron Rodgers and soaking up all of his knowledge and learning from him. I think it benefited him to a degree. I think it was short-sighted to believe that he would be the best backup option for this team, and they're paying the price for that. But I also think that they've bungled the entire operation by, finally kowtowing to all the pressure on the outside saying, well, make a change for change's sake. And when they made the change, I'm like, you're just doing this just to make a change. It's not going to be any better. We all know it's not going to be any better. And now they're in this, unenviable situation in which they have no choice but to go back to him because they've realized what we already knew, which is that nobody else in that roster was good enough.
One last thing on this. Do we now, because, it wasn't that long ago that you paid not an exorbitant amount, but a fair amount for a good backup quarterback. Case Keenum was making like $6.5 million. Maybe that's a little too high.
Jacoby Brissett got the most money of any backup this offseason to go play in Washington.
Right. And I know the thinking is, I get it. Like people are like, look, the contracts are so out of control. Look what wide receivers are getting. Quarterbacks are, we just can't afford to. But maybe you have to reevaluate, like, you know what? You gotta have that. You're not anticipating it. Nobody wants to, start the season with, hey, we got to sign this guy and have a good plan B but you've got to be thinking that way. And the teams, it seems like moving forward that do think that way have a much better shot of rescuing the season. Now, having said that, there's only so much to go around. So I'm not pretending like this is an easy call.
It's not.
But my God, when you look at all the injuries this year with these QBs, it's been amazing.
It's just funny though, because one of the first things that people started saying online, where everything is real and it's the only place that anything matters, is, wow, Jets should have signed Joe Flacco. He would have done a great job with them. They literally have proof that he could do the job, and yet they decided to not do that. They let Mike White walk. Like, they were just like, Zach's our guy, and Aaron's buddy Tim Boyle,
I
who
forgot
keeps getting
some of
jobs.
A.J. McCarron. I didn't know A.J.
He just got
McCarron's
elevated
still
this week.
Yeah, I didn't know. I saw him last night. I'm like, A.J. McCarron's still in the game?
The funny thing is, I'm watching the Browns-Rams game, and I'm listening to Mark Sanchez talk about Joe Flacco, and he said something like, man, it's great to see that he's still got it. It's great. It's great. It was almost like you could hear a bit of yearning in Mark's voice, like, damn, I wonder if I still got it. Like, it was one of those situations where I'm just like, are you sure, Mark, that you're not a little envious right now that you couldn't do the same thing? You're kind of around the same age. I just think it's funny, though, because it also points to something that we often overlook because, again, so many fans treat football as if it is Madden, which is you can just plug and play a guy. I think Flacco actually would have been the best quarterback in the Jets roster outside of Aaron Rodgers if he was on the roster, but that's not how they could go about it. And yet he's out there for the taking, and the Browns go snatch him up. And he finds success immediately. But it points to organizational stability because I can't believe I'm saying this about the Browns, considering who they've been as a franchise for the last 20, 25 years. But they have a more solid foundation as an organization when it comes to player acquisition and preparation on the coaching staff than the Jets do right now.
The Jets are a hot
They're a mess.
Oh, my goodness.
I actually can't guarantee that Flacco would go in and play any better because that offensive line's terrible.
You've got... if I'm not mistaken, Robert Saleh went on Francesa's show in New York and said, no, I talked to Zach, and I don't know where this report's coming from.
Of course he's going to say that.
Yeah, right. But then it's like you got these – it's already out there, right? I mean, it's already out there. And now, like, if you're a teammate – and again, I know you're right. Like, Saleh's just trying to, try to remedy this however he can. But if you're one of Zach Wilson's teammates, I don't want him. I don't want to see you in the huddle. I mean, I hear.
Yeah, but do you want Tim Boyle still? Do you want Trevor Siemian?
But you had a guy. As much as, again, it's not to say I don't agree with what Zach Wilson said. If Zach Wilson is hanging out here in our extravagant big play lounge here at Berkeley Lakefront Airport, and we're just like, hey man, just couple of guys being dudes hanging out. What do you think? I got to tell you, Chico, I'm going to get killed back there. You've seen this offensive line. Okay. But it got out there, and now I think his teammates are going to be like, especially after last year, there just wasn't a whole lot of faith and trust to begin with.
Look, the Jets are 4-8. They play Houston, Miami, Washington, Cleveland, and New England.
I'm just trying to make us all feel better here in Cleveland.
One of those games is winnable, and it's New England, who has had their number in the past.
Great effort by the Chargers. Good God, man.
Yeah.
6-0.
Chargers are a mess too. It was a gross day there, but they're a mess too.
All right, so the Browns are 7-5. Are we still, as they get set for Jacksonville on Sunday, are we still of the mindset that 10 is a pretty good number?
No.
Okay.
I think that the AFC has gotten tight enough now, especially with what happened in Jacksonville last night, that the AFC South is entirely up for grabs, and all of those teams are going to be playing for the division, which means that their win total is going to rise. Now, ultimately, they are going to separate a little bit because of who they play in the remaining games, but I think that the competition has increased. There was a couple weeks ago where the Browns had like a 75 to 80% chance of making the playoffs at 7-3. That has obviously dropped since they're now 7-5. I think the number is now 11. Which is crazy to say, but I think 11 will secure you a wild card spot. And if you look at their remaining schedule, I think they can get the job done. And if they get the job done Sunday, it's going to look a lot better for them down the stretch because you get Jacksonville, Chicago, both at home. 3 of your last 5 games are at home. The Browns are notoriously good at home, okay? But you need to win 4 of those 5 to get to 11. And the one game I see on the schedule right now is the most likely loss is Houston,
which
is in 2 weeks from now.
Jets,
because
Bengals,
of the way that they're playing. Yep. The Jets are a nightmare. You can win that game. The Bengals, who knows if Jake Browning's going to put together another game like that against a better defense, although Jacksonville's defense is pretty opportunistic. Chicago's a mess. Jacksonville's probably not going to have Trevor Lawrence, so that kind of lowers their ceiling for offensive output, which makes it more likely that you can keep up with them. But you have to win 4 of the 5. And the biggest thing, Chico, I hate to say this, but I came to this conclusion on Sunday night. I'm watching the second half, and my fiance is returning from California today, so I'm trying to wrap her gifts before she gets back because I don't want her to see them. So I'm wrapping gifts while I'm...
You already got your Christmas shopping?
Oh, dude, I'm about done.
Look at you. Look at this guy.
Best way to avoid the holiday stress. Get it done quickly. Get it all sent to your house. Go out once like I did and buy random toys for your niece and nephew on a Saturday at Walmart. But otherwise, get it done online. So I'm sitting there watching the second half. I'm watching the defense get a stop, and Joe Flacco's got the ball. And I'm in the middle of wrapping a gift, and I obviously have the TV right in front of me. And I see Flacco drop back to pass and throw the pick, and I'm thinking, oh, no. And then they go down and they score, and it's a bad situation. I'm like, well, at least I'll get these gifts wrapped before the end of this game, because I did. But the realization hit me as I'm wrapping these gifts and watching the Browns melt down in the final quarter. They might be the 2021 Arizona Cardinals, which was a team that had a really strong start. A lot of people thought they were the best team in football under Cliff Kingsbury with Kyler Murray at quarterback.
Murray was lighting it up.
They won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Their first 7 games they won. They lost to the Packers in a thriller. I think that was the Rasul Douglas interceptions game. That was the primetime game in Arizona. They lost that one by 3. They then win 3 of their next 4. So everyone's like, all right, they're back on track. They're 10-2. They lose 4 of their final 5. They finish 11-6. They get in the playoffs, and they get stomped by the eventual Super Bowl champion Rams in Super Wildcard Weekend.
How many of those games down the stretch did Murray miss? Because he had some that I think he played through a couple. But
I don't know.
Clearly, I think he had a shoulder, and I think there was something. I thought he was hurt. Maybe I'm thinking of.
How fast can I Google? Let's see. He missed 9, 10, and 11. Weeks 9, 10, and 11, they won 2 of those 3 games.
Okay.
And then he played down the stretch, but he was dealing with some injury. But that team blew a tire down the stretch, and that's how I consistently described it after the fact, because it was a disaster. A lot of people thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. They ended up being a punchless exit in the first round of the playoffs, and they got there largely on what they'd done early in the season. I worry that the Browns are that team because a lot of where they are right now was accomplished early in the season. They have dealt with so many changes at quarterback, and credit to them, they've been able to stay afloat, and maybe Joe Flacco can keep that ship afloat even as the storm continues to get worse out there on Lake Erie, right? But this is not going to be an easy final 5 games. We looked at these last 7 games and thought they should be favored in every game, and they weren't. And even if they were favored, they didn't win the game. They lost in Denver. They lost in LA last week. And now suddenly the pressure's ramped up. And for a team that has so many injuries, which is the biggest theme for this team, is that there's so many injuries that they've had to battle. Can you find a way to win 4 of your last 5? That's a tall task. Winning 4 out of your last 5 in the NFL is difficult, especially late in the season when injuries build up.
And, I mean, let's be honest. Now, all of a sudden, and I'm not going to just base it on one game and Jake Browning looked great because, again, backups are backups for a reason. You know, he could very well come out and next week and be awful. But
he could be awful in the last week of the season when there's nothing left to play for.
Right. Well, that's my point, though. What if the Bengals all of a sudden, because now they're kind of, they're on the outside looking in. Going into last night, I think we all thought, well, that Bengals game, they're not going to have any. They might very well have something to play for. That might very well come down to a playoff spot.
Yeah, so that was point number 5 in my What We Learned Last Night.
Wow.
Was that the Bengals have hope again.
Yeah.
Because their quarterback was able to play well enough to lead them to an overtime victory, nonetheless. And guess who they play this week? A team that's right there with them in the playoff standings, the Indianapolis Colts, who are playing similarly good football.
Yep.
That is going to be one of those separation games where we're going to learn a lot about both teams. I will try my damnedest to pick that game for live coverage on Sunday. And then they go play Minnesota, another team that's got to continue to battle to try to get to the playoffs. Pittsburgh, another team that's got to continue to battle. Kansas City and Cleveland. They could end up losing all 4 of those games, be 6-10, and have nothing to play for in Cleveland except for a little bit of pride. That would be the ideal situation for the Browns. But if they win some of those games and the Browns continue to struggle, could be a bad situation for the Browns.
So I think we simplified that. I agree with Nick. That's the reason I asked him the question. Do you think 10? Because for a while, 10 was that magic number. I'm with him. I think it's 11. And obviously, you do the math. 5 games left. You got to win 4 out of those 5, you would think, to feel good about your situation. We shall see. Again, week 14 of the Bold Bald Breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Chico Borman and Nick Shook with NFL.com and NFL Network. All right, let's get to the numbers that matter from this defeat by the Los Angeles Rams. We'll start with Myles Garrett. Boy, this was he's got to get healthy in a hurry. But Myles 2 is the number.
Myles Garrett generated just 2 quarterback pressures on 32 pass rushes. It's his lowest pressure rate since week 16 of 2021. We remember how that season went. It was not the best. We've talked about it already, but it was concerning to see that defense operated without a full strength Myles Garrett. It really started in the second half in Denver. He's just been a non-factor in the last 2 games, and it's like taking T.J. Watt out of the Steelers lineup.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Alex Highsmith can find success. Zadarius Smith or Obo Okoronkwo can find success, but it's not as good as having both, and it's definitely hurt. It hurt them on Sunday for sure.
Well, the theme of this entire season, not only for the Browns but for every team, seemingly, number of QBs you've had to go through, and the Browns right now are at
4.
Wow.
Deshaun Watson's jersey number. Joe Flacco became the Browns' 4th different starting quarterback of the 2023 season on Sunday. Played pretty well. Played quite well. Didn't win the game.
You mentioned Joe Flacco airing it out and certainly trying to take some shots downfield. And you mentioned that you had a number for that one. 19,
Actually,
number that mattered.
Let's call an audible. I want to call a quick audible.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's do 18 as well. This is not in the notes, but I'll tell you why.
Ooh.
There at the end of the third quarter on
Omaha?
Sunday.
Omaha?
Yeah. Turbos. I go.
Ready, red 80.
Dak Prescott's got the best cadence in the NFL right now. Here we go.
You might be. Heck, even with that cadence, he might still be creeping up the MVP.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, he's squarely in the conversation right now. He's balling. 18 was, so at the end of the third quarter on Sunday, Fox ran a graphic that showed the comparison between Flacco and Stafford. And we all knew Flacco was playing a great game, and it was a back-and-forth affair. They were going toe-to-toe. They both had 18 completions after three quarters. 18 to 32 for Stafford, 18 to 33 for Joe Flacco.
Wow.
Stafford, who has been in my top 10 or damn near close to it for the entire year in the QB index, and Flacco's going toe-to-toe with him in his first game of the season.
So where is Flacco?
No, it would be great if the Browns had won. We'd be on cloud 9 right now.
So we got to know where Flacco is in the QB rankings.
I think he's going to be atop the backups because I usually have the backups group lower unless they play better. Like he's going to be in the Kyler Murray range, but it's going to be so much higher than DTR and PJ Walker were, and even Deshaun Watson. I think he might be the highest rated quarterback going. I still have to finish that today. So you'll find out on Thursday. I file it tomorrow, but you'll find out on Thursday on NFL.com. NFL.com/QB index for your weekly quarterback rankings that I spend 25 plus hours a week doing. All right, 19 was the number
yes,
to get us
19.
back on track. Flacco's 19 attempts. We talked about him airing it out. He had 19 attempts of over 10 air yards. That is what we call an intermediate to deep pass. That is a pass that is more than a dump off, more than a check down, passes of significance. He had 19 such attempts. They were the most in a game for a Browns quarterback since week 17 of the 2018 season.
That's the one that got. I saw 2018 and I'm like, what?
Yes, Baker Mayfield's rookie year. We remember who was calling plays that year, who ended up getting the head coaching job the next year, and who was fired after that season.
Frederick.
Yes, good old Freddie.
I didn't know.
My guy,
I don't
Freddie
know what
Kitchens.
his middle name is, but
I don't know. I don't either.
Well, you should. You're kind of you and him are tight. You should know his middle name.
I know his orders on certain things, but not his middle name.
All right. This guy certainly hurt the Browns on Sunday. Did so really right away in this game, and was a problem. Even coming back, you talk about a tough dude.
Dude got hurt like twice.
I thought I didn't think there was any way he was coming back, but Puka Nacua, number 44.
Yeah, hell of a rookie season out of this kid.
Not his number.
One of the many
numbers.
Nacuas that have graced the NFL with their presence, and he is the best of them all. Kai Nacua being another one, former Brown. Puka Nacua generated the second most receiving yards over expected of his career in a game Sunday, plus 44 yards over expected, which is receiving yards that you generate when either passes are not expected to be completed because of difficulty, or your ability to catch and gain additional yards after the catch.
Okay. We talked about Joe Flacco at the reins, obviously playing relatively well, minus that interception late. He certainly connected. Amari Cooper, we should say, did go down with an injury. We'll have to wait on his status too. But Elijah Moore, his old buddy from New York with the Jets, emerged, and our final number that matters as far as the Browns-Rams game is 83, Nick.
Yeah, so this is a silver lining that I think Browns fans can look forward to paying attention to as long as Joe Flacco's on the field, because the Browns went and got Elijah Moore in the offseason, and I was very high on the addition because I know of his potential. He's a former second-round pick. They essentially gave up a second-round pick for a second-round pick who would be a first-round pick in this year's draft, but he hasn't produced at the level that you thought. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of continuity at quarterback. Now he gets Joe Flacco, a guy he used to play with in New York, and suddenly, boom, he's finding opportunities to make plays so much that he puts together his best game as a Brown this year with 83 receiving yards, his most in a game in 2023, and the third most in a game in his career. He set his career high with the Jets 2 years ago in Week 11, and who was playing quarterback, Chico?
Wait, one more time.
Elijah Moore set his career receiving high in a game 2 years ago with the Jets. Who was playing
Joe
quarterback?
Flacco.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's no coincidence, folks. So keep an eye on Elijah Moore.
Wow. Good stuff, man. You really, you called the audible. You had 20 stats coming out of 2018.
The audible came from a screen grab that I took of the box score at the end of the third quarter after they ran that graphic, and I'm like, if the Browns win, this is going to matter. And they didn't win, so I didn't include it, but it was still on my screen.
If you think this is just nachos on the couch watching football.
Wrapping gifts on the couch.
Yeah, wrapping gifts is what it is. All right, now we turn our attention to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think even before last night, a very strange team.
Yeah, the Browns are too.
First of all, they were a sexy pick at the start of the year. Like, watch out for Jacksonville. They came after Urban was, given his walking papers, and that Trevor Lawrence came on, and then, Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne, and the defense is strong. They're undefeated on the road. They don't lose on the road. At home, they're not so great.
Yeah.
Now Trevor Lawrence is hurt. We don't know his status, but by the way, I'm going to say something that I know everybody's been talking about today, but it bears repeating. How do you not have a cart for Trevor Lawrence?
Why is a cop helping Trevor Lawrence walk to the locker room?
I mean, I know it's golf course territory down there.
They should all have carts.
Yes. Yeah, he's hot. It looked like a high school. It looked like I didn't. That's astonishing to me.
Well, it made for great TV. Maybe it was like Lawrence saying, "No, I refuse the cart. Like, I want to show that I'm tough and slowly walk with both arms over people, including a police officer."
Still the owner.
Yeah, and they've put a ton of money in that franchise. They're not poor.
No,
his son owns AEW Wrestling, which I think I just was it All Elite Wrestling. So I did All Elite Wrestling, but that's neither here nor there.
I always thought Shad Khan kind of resembles Chef Boyardee.
Kind of. He definitely looks like he looks like a Pixar chef. Like somebody that would be in Ratatouille 4 or whatever. I don't know which Ratatouille they're on now, but there's Shad Khan, yeah. They've put a ton of money in that franchise. I don't know how they didn't have a cart. I think it was just like optics, like let me look tough, but it did not look good. Trevor Lawrence throwing his helmet off, being unable to stand after spraining his ankle, which actually didn't look that severe when he sprained it.
Right.
Was telling, and I think that unfortunately for the Jaguars, because you never want to celebrate anybody getting injured, but for the Browns, it is perhaps some very fortuitous timing. We'll see if he ends up playing. If he does, he'll probably be hobbled. He was already dealing with a knee injury for most of the last 2 months. He was kind of getting past that. He looked better in the last 3 weeks. In fact, he was in the middle of putting together another great game for a third straight week, and then he gets hurt, and that changed the entire game. So if the Browns have to face C.J. Beathard, he's got history as a backup who's come in and played with the 49ers, but the ceiling is lower and increases their chances.
Boom. Never in a million years did I think we would have back-to-back days referencing C.J. Beathard. I was talking about Iowa football yesterday, and I was mentioning the likes of, late Catholic
Ricky
Stanzi, Drew Tate, and then Bohm's like, oh, and don't forget C.J. Beathard, and I'm like, oh, yeah, C.J. Beathard. And then all of a sudden, like last night happens, I'm like, wait a minute.
Speak of the devil.
We got back-to-back C.J. Beathard days on the show?
I'm gonna bring in a Around the NFL lexicon piece over here. He is C.J. Beathard, because that is how it's spelled.
C.J. Beathard.
He is Beathard.
Well, how did Bobby Beathard say? He spelled it.
I know. It's just,
I like that.
They used to call Jacoby Brissett Jake Brisket. Slice me off a piece of that Jake Brisket.
We need to bring back the nicknames for one weekend. Just like,
well, once you go Flacco,
you never go Blacko.
Backo.
We meant Backo. Yeah, that's what we meant. Boy, them lights are bright. All right. The other injury for Jacksonville, by the way, Christian Kirk. Pretty nice target. A guy that, and especially for a secondary that has been banged up, and we don't know.
Goes down early, yeah.
Yeah, that's first catch. He had 26-yard catch, and then he injured his groin. It looks like, now again, this is Tuesday, but it looked like neither one of those guys are going to be playing this Sunday. And again, it's way early on that. But those are two huge contributors on that offense.
Yeah, and yet, well, okay, so I would not feel terrible about Kirk not being available if you're a Jaguars fan until you lost Trevor Lawrence. Because, shout out, we're going to talk Big Ten names here. Parker Washington, the Penn State product, a guy that nobody paid attention to, who had a nice college career, had a great game last night. And that was because of Trevor Lawrence. At least a big part of it was because of Trevor Lawrence. Washington made some phenomenal plays, including his touchdown grab.
Did Parker Washington have a really good career at Penn State? I'm kind of like...
He had good plays. if that makes
place.
sense.
Oh,
like
okay.
he took a touchdown like 80 yards on Ohio
I was
State.
gonna say, did I miss like he was, one of the?
He was no Allen Robinson or KJ Hamler, but
He was no O.J. McDuffie.
all right.
Okay, so if those two are out,
Then the ceiling's lower, and the Browns have a great chance, I think, if their defense can play well enough, and they've played well. It's actually going to be unstoppable force versus a movable object this weekend because the Browns are great at home and the Jaguars are great on the road, which is hilarious considering they're the team that calls London their second home. Their only home wins of significance came in London.
yeah, they count the London games
As neutral site.
but they are road games. They're
Yeah.
counted as wins, right?
I mean, no, that's not in the 6 road games that they've won. Those are neutral site or home site. They're 2-4 because what do they have, 8 wins or whatever it is? Yeah, they're 8-4. They've gone 6-0 away from home. So no, they are counting them as road neutral.
That's
Road
what I
neutral,
thought.
they're 6-0. 2-4 at Everbank Field Stadium. They've changed the name of that stadium like 3 times.
Okay, so we know. I mean, they still have Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne. I want to focus on the defense. What's Jacksonville look like on that side of the ball, and what does Joe Flacco? I'm just assuming it's Joe Flacco. I know he's back in the practice.
Stefanski wouldn't commit to him, but
And I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? Like if you want people, if you want
prep
them to
for
practice,
2 different styles. Yeah,
right,
I get
that's
that.
fine. But it's going to be Joe Flacco. What do we see from Jacksonville on defense?
Opportunistic defense, strong secondary that will capitalize on mistakes. The key is not making mistakes. The key is protecting long enough to prevent Josh Allen from getting there and not taking risks that is going to result in a Rayshon Jenkins pick or a Darius Williams pick or an Andre Sisco pick or a Tyson Campbell pass breakup because he just doesn't get as many picks as the other guys. They have studs on the front 4 in Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker has not lived up to his number 1 overall pick status, but he's still a good player. I don't think it's necessarily a game where you're like, you got to pound the run, although that is what the Bengals did last night. That really opened up that team. So in that game, so maybe that is what the Browns do. But I think there's a blueprint to beat them. I don't think that you're facing like a monster of a defense. It's just that you have to minimize risk. That's going to be the key to win.
Numbers that matter for the Jacksonville Jaguars ahead of this Sunday's game, 1:00, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Browns 7-5. Following the 36-19 loss to the L.A. Rams. Speaking of tight end, or speaking of Penn State players, a tight end that played his college ball at Penn State, Evan Engram. And the
didn't he
numbers.
play at Ole Miss? He played
Did
at
he?
Ole Miss? I think he played at Ole Miss.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of Bobby Engram.
There you go.
Man,
Yeah.
oh man.
Right?
Party foul. Man, I thought for sure that I had. Yeah,
Yeah, he played at Ole Miss.
because they spelled the same last.
Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. If there was another notable shook in anywhere outside of the WNBA, you'd be confusing that person with me as well.
My bad. All right, Evan Engram though, still one.
He has had a solid year, had a good year last year, so much that they re-signed him. He has a Pro Bowl appearance, which I think was nonsense because it wasn't actually that good of a year with the Giants. That's irrelevant at this point. But he had his first touchdown catch last night. That was kind of a running theme with the Jaguars was, hey, they put points on the board and Evan Ingram's having a good year, but he can't get in the end zone. He finally got in the end zone last night. That opened up the scoring for the Jaguars in that game. He will be a problem for the Browns defense, much like Tyler Higbee. I went in fantasy, picked up Tyler Higbee last week before he got hurt in that game, and he was making him pay before he left. The Browns do struggle against tight ends at times, so they need to focus on stopping him.
Calvin Ridley has been very hit or miss, it seems, but still, obviously, a very, very talented, dynamic wide receiver.
Yeah, he's going to be a big issue.
Okay. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, the road record, but 6.
Wow, this is a loud bottle.
So is my computer.
It's got a small mouth. We're going to stay there. Don't go any further. That's why the water ends up splashing down and makes a glunking sound.
And now you know
the Jaguars.
the rest of the story.
Science.
Paul Harvey.
The Jaguars are a perfect 6-0 on the road this year, or in neutral site games. They played 2 games in London, pseudo home site, considered a neutral site game. Good away from Jacksonville, not good for the Browns.
I was nervous that we would get through the numbers that matter segment and not have one with a decimal point. He did not disappoint me. 25.7 is what?
Jacksonville's averaging 25.7 points per game in every contest played outside of Duval County this year. So the Browns, there's your target. Scored 26. You might win the game.
I'd like my chances there. I hope
26 if the weather's like this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned this guy earlier. He has been very, very good. Was outstanding in college. High draft pick. 72 for
Josh Allen, not the quarterback, the edge rusher, has 72 quarterback pressures this season, the second most in the NFL behind Micah Parsons. A number that I was a little surprised to see. I know he's had a really good year, like Pro Bowl, borderline All-Pro caliber season. But I thought about pressure totals, and I thought Myles Garrett would be up there, T.J. Watt. But no, it's Josh Allen right behind Parsons.
I kind of felt like I all I could think of was Kenny Mayne there, channeling Mayne or Kenny Mayne when you made a point to say it's Josh Allen, the DN, not the quarterback. If that was the quarterback, it'd be a record.
A deadpan.
That was always one of my favorite Kenny Mayne moments.
Yeah.
He went. That's 460 on that. That's in his career, not in the game. If that was in a game, it'd be a record. 335 is our final number that matters. What do you got?
I miss the personality of SportsCenter.
So do I.
Yeah.
100%, Nick. 100%.
335. The Jaguars allowed 335 net passing yards to Jake Browning in Monday night's loss. He actually finished with over 350, but because of sacks, that total comes down in the net. If you can allow that to Jake Browning in an offense that's perfectly schemed to his strengths, I would love to see what Kevin Stefanski can do with Joe Flacco, because that bodes really well for the Browns. Not to mention the fact that they're good at home, but if you have Flacco in the game and he's able to control the offense, and I say control because they've lacked control at the quarterback position for most of this season, and it has been their downfall on the offensive side of the football. If he can control the offense and operate it like he did for 3.5 quarters on Sunday, I think their chances are pretty good.
All right, couple other nuggets I wanted to toss around here. First one, the San Francisco 49ers got off to that incredible start. Then they had that lull included in that, a Browns loss. And I got to be honest with you, I said to Bohm, like many people did, or you said the opposite, but I saw that line against Philadelphia, and I'm like, wait a minute, the Eagles at home are getting 3. What am I missing? And I guess,
saw.
Yeah, what I was missing was the San Francisco 49ers are back. What do you see from them, and did you see in that game?
Yeah, I've watched the 49ers play in the last couple of weeks and thought, oh, damn. Like, they are very, very so back. But I also thought, well, it's the opponent. Like, they dominated the Seahawks, and I was like, how are they going to stack up against the Eagles? The Eagles, who had only lost one game to this point entering Sunday, without playing a complete game all year, and which makes me respect the hell out of them, because if they ever do play a complete game, watch out.
Yeah.
They could be the best team in football. But when they don't play complete games and the errors are there, the flaws are apparent, they can snowball, and boy, did they snowball in Philadelphia on Sunday. San Francisco ran away with that game. It didn't matter. They could have played that at the North Pole, and San Jose's could have been in the stands, and it did not matter because Brock Purdy was the Grinch.
By the way, can we? I saw a tweet. I don't even know where it came from.
Oh God!
You know what I
God!
Think, where it said Brock Purdy, your leader for MVP.
Oh,
I mean,
I got a lot of 49. I got 49ers fans in my mentions immediately after 49ers win saying, "I can't wait to see Nick Shook underrate Brock Purdy in QB Index again." This week.
QB Index is one thing. NFL MVP is another. I mean, I don't. If you want to say there's still a lot of football left, but if you want to say he ends up in the conversation, but the leader right now, this is kind of like we do this with like the Heisman Trophy and MVP awards, but like Tyreek Hill to me is the NFL MVP.
If he breaks 2,000 receiving yards, he's gonna have a great chance.
Yeah, and that's no knock on Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. I mean, we kind of expect them to be all-world every year, but just because they are the QBs and just because they are, extremely talented and their teams are pretty good, although Kansas City, you got some issues, I think, it's okay to have others. I get it. The quarterback touches the ball more than anybody else, most important player on the field. Totally understand it. But when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill doing what he's doing, Myles Garrett, if he doesn't get hurt, let's say he breaks. That's the other thing. If you have the receiving record, you have a sacks record, in jeopardy. I think those guys have to be taken into strong consideration for the MVP if you don't have a quarterback running away with it. You don't have.
Yeah.
Maybe Dak is at the head of the quarterback class.
That's who I have right now. If you look at the stats, Dak leads the league in touchdown passes with 26. He has a 26-6 touchdown interception ratio. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cowboys play down the stretch because I think they have a lot of road games left and they've been really good at home. But, I mean, he's got 3,200 passing yards. He's looked fantastic.
Is his mobility back? Is that kind of the big...
It's not the mobility. It's the way they're moving him. They're using his ability to move without calling it mobility. Because mobility is often like Lamar Jackson taking off and running, right? It's not necessarily that. He does run a little bit. He doesn't run nearly as much as he used to because he's got to protect his health. That's totally fine. But for all of the reasons that I looked at the Cowboys and their change at offensive coordinator in the offseason, letting Kellen Moore go and Mike McCarthy taking over, and for all the criticism that I produced from that, thinking, okay, Mike, you can't manage the clock and now you're going to call plays, I was wrong. He's the play caller for that team. He's putting together quite a year.
There was something going on in that barn in Oshkosh. He wasn't just eating cheese.
He was just chewing on straw,
yeah,
eating cheese, and drawing up how he's going to make Dak Prescott into an MVP. He's playing like it right now. I think Purdy could be a dark horse because they're playing so well, and he's playing incredibly efficiently, but I think efficiency doesn't often get you awards as much as gross output does, which is why if Tyreek Hill breaks 2,000 receiving yards, he's going to have a strong case. Dak's going to be there. Mahomes will be there because he's Mahomes, even though he's having an up-and-down year. And I think, honestly, I'd put – people are going to hate me for this, especially in San Francisco, but bring the smoke. I've been to the Bay twice in the last 3 months. Come find me next time I go there. I think that C.J. Stroud is probably still ahead of Brock Purdy right now.
I would absolutely put him ahead.
That's
of Brock
probably
Purdy.
like if I had to round out 5 guys, it would go Dak, Tyreek, Mahomes, Stroud, Purdy. So you can have your dark horse 5th place.
Okay, before we get out of here, a little I don't want to say breaking news, but Demetrius Harvey is a Jaguars reporter for Jax.com. And apparently he writes, head coach Doug Peterson says, quote, "I believe so," when asked if Christian Kirk's core injury will require surgery. We thought it was a groin.
Yeah.
It's a core injury, and I think at the very least he's probably not going to play this weekend.
No, if it requires surgery, no. I think it's also funny how we refer to groin and core. Odell Beckham, 2019, similar situation where it's just like one general area. Like hockey, lower body injury, upper body injury.
In the 90s, long before that, I know they didn't, but like even in the 90s, did anyone have core injuries or say core injuries?
Abdominal.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I was just going to say, if it was a core injury, it was usually labeled like an abdominal injury.
Unless it's like a hernia.
Yeah.
I don't think a hernia would make you unable to get up on the field, though.
Core injury. All right, last thing before I let you go. Your thoughts on the Final Four in college football.
Buddy.
Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama.
Oh, I saw a tweet today that the state of Florida is allocating $1 million in their latest budget to sue the CFP for keeping Florida State out. And it needs Ron DeSantis' final approval, which is hilarious to me for many reasons.
Ron DeSantis, yes, he is very funny.
There are many reasons that is funny.
Ron DeSantis.
Including debating somebody who's not running for president. But again, neither here nor there. Getting dressed down, too. So I think that the CFP found itself in an unwinnable situation. And honestly, the timing is advantageous for them because they thought, well, hey, everybody who didn't want a 12-team playoff next year, this won't be a problem. This is a great year to have a 12-team playoff. We can't guarantee that, Penn State would be in this year. Penn State doesn't belong in the playoff.
Yeah, Penn State would be a play. Yeah, exactly.
But they'd be a team that gets blown out in the first round of the playoffs. More money, everything works. That's fine. I think that what we saw was the CFP shift away from the way they do Selection Sunday in NCAA basketball, which is by looking at resume and FPI and all that stuff. And instead, they just said, nah, you know what? Let's get the best teams in. The best teams. Because we cannot question that Alabama is one of the best teams in college football right now. I kind of wish they would have actually lost to Auburn the week prior, though, so we didn't have.
And
this
they
problem.
almost did. And Georgia almost did.
Let's not Why are we overlooking that fact when evaluating them? By the way,
yes.
Oh, you almost got caught by Auburn in the Iron Bowl. It doesn't matter. You beat Georgia for the SEC
I've heard
title
a lot
game.
of people say, well, look at these last 2 games for Florida State. Well, can we look at the last 2 games for Alabama?
Because they damn near lost a game that they shouldn't have lost to an average at best team in Auburn. Okay, so why are we overlooking that? But if you're looking at the best teams, Alabama is one of the best teams in college football.
Yes.
but we're throwing out the resume. We're throwing out most deserving. We're just going to best. And I don't think that's how it was always done. I also disagree with how they put a value on a quarterback, because there's precedent for putting too much value on a quarterback. 2014 Ohio State goes into the CFP.
Sing it, sister.
With Cardale Jones and goes and wins the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
You can't tell me that Florida State wasn't going to do that. And the thing that stood out to me the most in the last couple games for Florida State was not the quarterback issue. We knew that. They played with the third stringer in the ACC championship game. And they won because their defense is good.
So check this out. And I know you got to get home to wrap, but
I'm done rapping.
oh,
Well,
okay. Almost. All right. So we had Ari Wasserman on the show yesterday, and he brought up a very interesting point. Like, if let's say Ohio State 2002 was this year.
that's Florida State. That was my immediate comparison. As soon as I watched them on Saturday night, I'm like, this is the 02 Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Minus Maurice Claret.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I saw in them.
Look at how many close games, the resume.
Great defense, teaching tape all over the place at defensive back, just like Ohio State had with Mike Doss, and you had linebackers that are making a difference like C. Grant back then, and then you have an edge rushing group.
Well, Miami's a 12-point favorite. I mean, they shouldn't even be. Oh, well, hang on a second, because defense
matters.
That front four, I'll give Herb Street credit. Herb Street said on that night, I'll never forget it. He's like, he holds up these party invitations from Andre Johnson. You may have seen it. Willis McGahee. He's like, fellas are already printing out, party invitations to celebrate the national championship before the game's played. They made their way into the Buckeyes locker room that week, by the way. And he said, Ohio State shocks the world, but this is how they win the game. The front four, Kenny Dorsey has not eaten turf pretty much all year. Brett Romberg, all world. That front four is going to really do some damage, and that's exactly what happened.
Who was in that group? Will Smith, R.I.P.
Kenny Pickett.
No, that's quarterback for the Steelers. Who are we talking about?
No. There's a,
there was a Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, I think.
Who else is in that team? I used to know this entire lineup by heart, because you had Chris Gamble playing both ways.
Now I want to make sure it wasn't.
I get it confused with later Buckeye teams that had Ashton Yabodi.
Was Simon Frazier on that team?
Simon Frazier was in that group.
Yep.
This was a great
Dustin Fox.
Dustin, obviously. This is a great defense.
Yeah, I knew it. Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's on me.
Or Kenny. Wow, that's going to drive me nuts.
Why you can't look up this roster?
No, I thought it was. I just put in Kenny Pickett, and I thought it said, but this is now Kenny Pickett, his final schools, the former Pitt quarterback. God, it's going to drive me. Kenny.
They had Mike DeAndre at linebacker.
Yep.
Yeah, I already said C. Grant.
Oh, that was Matt Wilhelm.
Yes,
Mike
Wilhelm.
Doss.
Yes, I talked about Doss.
Chris Gamble.
You had Nate Sally, but that was a young Nate Sally.
Yeah, Nate Sally.
He was a freshman. Donnie Nicky, Will Allen.
Who was? I'm trying to think of the other guys up front.
Young Bobby Carpenter on that group.
Yep.
Oh, Brandon Schnitker
Kenny
played fullback.
Patterson, I think.
Kenny Patterson, that's who it is. That's who it is. That's who it was.
Kenny Patterson, that's it. Kenny Patterson and Will Smith were roommates. And Kenny Patterson and Will Smith, a story came out a week later. The next day, they roomed together, whatever, same hotel. They could not get out of bed. Double overtime.
Yeah.
Think about that. You're in the desert, the heat, and it just, he's like, neither one of us, Kenny said, neither one of us could move.
I'm surprised they found a way home. Quinn Pitcock.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. It was, Kenny Peterson. You're right. Man, so that's Florida State to me. Jared Verse is going to be a phenomenal edge rusher in the NFL. That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
Why not give them a shot? I get it. I understand. And you know what it is, too, is they're tired of blowouts in the first round.
Don't the results have to mean something?
That's my point, is deserving does matter. You can't go undefeated and win a conference championship and get jumped by a team that lost to another playoff team. I disagree with that.
They want to act like conference championships are a big deal, but obviously they're not a big deal. I mean, Florida State won their conference champ. Well, Louisville's. Well, you know what? Look at Louisville's schedule. I don't know.
My dad's texting me. Kenny Peterson, defensive end, Canton McKinley.
Peterson. Yeah.
Canton McKinley. You'd know, Dad. Of course you would.
I said Pickett and Patterson before we got to Peterson. Thank you, Mr. Shook.
Yeah.
Son of.
Look, I don't think they got it wrong. from a business perspective, from a money-making perspective, from a ratings perspective. But if that's how we're going to do it,
In principle, they screwed it up.
Yeah, I really wish we had one more year of 4 teams just so we could hold their feet to the fire and just be like, oh, well, last year it was best teams. What about now?
All right, prediction time before we get out of here. Jacksonville Jaguars. How do you say Jaguars?
I was going to broach that topic. It's controversial in Florida. My good pal Sean Barry works in Tampa. He's worked in 2 Florida markets. Yeah. And he's a sports reporter at Fox 13 in Tampa. And he says Jaguars. And I've tried to get him to change it. And when we do our podcast, Gridiron Podcast, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. He always says Jaguars. And then I'm always like, what? The who? The Jacksonville who? And then he'll just call him Jags because he can't bring himself to correct himself.
It's like Louisville versus Louisville.
Yes.
You're supposed to say Louisville.
The Brits call it Jaguars.
Yes, exactly. There's another way. If you're an auto manufacturer, a luxury auto manufacturer. And if you're in south of Canton, Louisville, Ohio. Yeah, I know. Too many. So I think Jaguars. Say it 5 times. Train your brain to say it that way so we can stop sounding like ignorant Americans.
So you're saying, so it's not even your opinion, it's your
Jaguars.
It's a fact.
Not
it's
Jaguar, but Jaguars.
Jaguars.
I'm not hooked on phonics over here, but I think it's right.
I kind of feel like you're doing the. We were just doing it before we came on the air. You're doing the Elaine kind of very sophisticated. Oh, maybe the dingo ate your baby.
Where's my fiance? I've lost my fiance.
It's Jaguars.
Maybe the dingo ate your baby. Oh, that poor baby.
All right. Prediction?
Browns 23, Jaguars 21.
Another close one. I'm going to say the Browns 21 and the Jaguars.
Oh, he did it on purpose.
Jaguars. I'm sorry. I've never said Jaguars. 17.
Okay.
I'll go 21-17.
Yeah. I think
Low
that the
scoring.
Browns.
I think the weather's going to be nasty.
I think that the Browns are probably going to need some field goals, and I think what happens is the Browns win 23-21 because Brandon McManus kicks a field goal as time expires in the dog pound end, and it sails right, much like Jake Moody's kick.
Like when you get very, very specific.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. He is Nate Shook.
It's okay.
He is Nick Shook
It's Tuesday.
with NFL.com. See,
He's still got to do his Christmas shopping.
the whole Kenny Peterson thing and Pickett and the fact that Mr. Shook had to take the time to text
He's
you.
a loyal viewer.
Yeah, God love him. He is Nick Shook, NFL.com and the NFL Network. You can also follow him on Twitter at the Nick Shook. I'm Mike Chico Borman. We'll do next week, week 15 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. Hopefully we got a Browns win. You heard Nick say it earlier, 4 out of 5. That magic number may bumped up to 11. So these are must-win games for the most part, pretty much down the stretch. But we'll do it again next week. Take a break now. We come back, hour 2 of the Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show, hour 2 on this Tuesday. Good to have you along. We do it live noon to 2, Monday through Friday, and available on Twitter. And you can do so at Chico Show CLE, also on YouTube. If you are not subscribed, go over to YouTube, type in the Chico Borman Show, and you will be all set to go. Also available on the iHeart Live radio stream and wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Doesn't matter. All right. I think there's some crystallizing happening and this will happen when you get towards the end of the season, final month of the season. They have 5 games left, the Browns do. And because they dropped those 2, Denver and LA, and truth be told, the LA game, like we said, and we talked about it yesterday, it wasn't good, but it didn't kill you because it's not an AFC foe. But these next 5 games, and I agree with Nick Shook, that you probably have to win. To feel good, to feel pretty confident that you're going to be a playoff team, you're going to be in that mix, you're probably going to need to get to 11 wins, which means 5 games left, 4 out of 5. Okay, Jacksonville this weekend. That appeared to be a daunting task. And by the way, Browns fans, nor should you apologize for any of this because we've had our own fair share of injuries. We're looking at them right now. Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Denzel Ward, Amari Cooper. I haven't heard anything on Amari either. Like, I don't know. I'll find out more tomorrow when they're back on the practice field. But they've had a plethora of injuries. But now Jacksonville all of a sudden could be without, and I think very, very realistically could be without Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk. I just gave that tweet. So they're down some big names. Does that mean it's a gimme? No, I think we know this by now. Anything can happen in the NFL. But what was once a game that you felt like, man, that could go either way. You like the fact that it's at home, but then also Jacksonville is undefeated on the road. Now you feel a little bit better. That Texans game, as much as I love C.J. Stroud and I love to see that one scares me. And look, I'm going to be rooting obviously for the Browns all day long. I know Bohm might have his C.J. Stroud jersey on, and he's had an incredible year. But that's going to be a game like these are now. The margin for error is slim. Like it might only be you can lose one of the 5 games. Jacksonville, Chicago at home. At Houston against C.J. Stroud, home to the Jets, which they're a hot dumpster fire, and then on the road at Cincinnati, taking on the Bengals to end the season.
First off, as far as C.J. Stroud, Chico, I'm hoping he has a good game, but the Browns still win. That's what I'm rooting for. I still want to see the young rook succeed, just not against the Browns so much.
Where do you want to see your boy Kyle McCord go in the transfer portal, Boom?
Stay out of the SEC unless it's like some smaller SEC school. I don't want to see him go into
You're thinking another Joe Burrow. No, I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, I imagine maybe he'll go to Washington State, replace Cam Ward, be like a trade. Perhaps UCLA, send him out west. Then he could. I really don't want him to wind up in a position where he ends up facing Ohio State and making them pay.
Do you think I don't think he's that talented. I mean, he's okay.
He's too inconsistent to call him like an elite college quarterback.
I don't think he's mentally tough enough.
He's made some spectacular, rare throws.
And that's okay. And in fairness, you don't do what he did against Notre Dame if you don't have some cojones. But all right, I'm going to say this. This is where I'm at right now with the Ohio State football program. And it's not, but Urban Meyer, for all of his quirks and, he can be he's a lot like Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I'm not the cheating stuff, but he's a lot like Jim Harbaugh. He's a great coach, but he's going to wear thin on a lot of people, and it's just a matter of time. But one thing Urban always did, and I think this program needs to get back to it, and I think this may be Ryan Day doing that at the quarterback position, because we found out, and I'm not putting this all on Kyle McCord. I mean, they the defense, the long drive by Michigan, like it's not all, but you needed better quarterback play. Everybody know that. I think this is Ryan Day needing, in my opinion, to get a little bit of the Urban Meyer edge to him, where he says, look, I'm not promising you anything. Urban Meyer was famous for this. Guys would come in and, well, what about my playing time? Well, if you're the best, we've got 4 and 5 stars here. And Nick Saban says the same stuff. Like, if you want to compete and you want to be, playing the best and you want to compete for a national championship and get yourself ready to play in the NFL, if that's your dream, then this is it. But if you think I'm guaranteeing you any kind of playing time, it ain't happening. I think Ryan Day needs to get a little bit more Urban-like in that regard, and maybe this is the start of it. And I don't think it was a shot at Kyle. I think they wanted to see Kyle say, okay, let's go. But, some guys, this is what the portal allows them to do. Take advantage of it. But if he that quickly made up his mind, then I wonder if he's really a guy that Ohio State wants at that quarterback position long term.
And I think that is fair to question, Chico. And the other thing, the other factor that's of note to me with this the whole transfer portal thing, Julian Fleming, it was announced, hit the portal.
Yeah,
which was that kind of sucked. I like Julian, but regardless, 11 players on Ohio State have hit the transfer portal. Meanwhile, I don't know what to make of it, but I find it interesting that so far no players from the team up north have hit the transfer portal. 0. It's I don't know if that speaks to the culture, the locker room, how things are going, and maybe losing the game had part of it.
Their season's still going.
Yeah,
and they can get in it right now, but I don't think they'd have no reason to do it now.
Is that something worth reading into, or you don't make any big deal of that?
Well, I don't think it's a culture thing. I think it's a kid thing. I mean, this is where I think it's shifting, is that now, like, okay, you could transfer, not as easily, but you could transfer years ago. But transferring and getting in the portal was, like, I don't want to say shameful. I don't want to go that far with it. But it was like, oh, well, you can't hack it, or you can't, you don't like the competition, or you got it with and sometimes, hey, it wasn't a fit. New coach came in. He wants to run this. I'm not even that. That's not my game. Okay, you transfer. But nonetheless, when guys did that, it was kind of looked down upon. It was kind of like, you know what? You're not a strong kid. You're not a team guy. You're not blah, blah, blah. Now it's just like, so I don't think it's necessarily a culture thing. I just think kids are saying, okay, well, hey, I'm going to go ahead and I've got a chance to do my thing. A guy like Julian Fleming, keep in mind that next year, and this is look, Ohio State recruits well. Ohio State's not going to all of a sudden just drop off. But think of all the guys they're going to be replacing. Your stellar running backs, that running back room, gone. Your 1, 2, and now because Julian Fleming's out, 3rd. I mean, you've got, and yeah, I know you've got talented guys behind him. I get that, but they haven't proven anything yet. So, Julian Fleming might have looked at that and said, I'd love to stick around and be the bona fide number 1 for Ohio State, but I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I don't know how this thing's going. And they lose a lot of key talent. A guy like Tommy Eichenberg is going to be gone. They've got a lot of guys to replace. For Ohio State next year. I don't think fair or foul, Bohm. Fair or foul, Ohio State. Yeah, it's too easy way too early to say this because you don't know how they're going to add. But I'll just say it anyway. Fair or foul, Ohio State is a preseason top 5 next year.
Top 5 for sure.
Preseason.
Yeah, I think top 5 seems reasonable to me because they're
top 10 seems reasonable. Top 5 isn't.
What happens in college football, or what happens at the quarterback position for Ohio State is going to be huge in that. But I'm running under the assumption that Ryan Day has a solution in mind, and maybe he hasn't actually figured it out. But I think he has options.
I'm sure he does. But again, we're talking about, like, okay, Alabama and Georgia returning their quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Michigan might return with J.J. McCarthy.
I think Quinn Ewers comes back.
That I don't know. I think a lot depends on what happens these next possibly 2
for
games.
sure.
I think it's more of a numbers game. I think they're definitely top 10, but and they can work their way back into there. But again, you're talking about them missing a lot of guys, having to replace, I should say, a lot of guys. I don't think they're a preseason top 5.
And the inexperience is the biggest X factor with this, in my opinion, because they do have a lot of talent coming in, but there's a lot of inexperience. There's a lot of guys like C.J. Hicks, for example, is a guy who I feel very confident about one day stepping in and filling Tommy Eichenberg's shoes and like maybe even doing far more than Eichenberg ever accomplished. But he needs to get that experience under his belt.
By the way, they also lose Kate Stover. Very, very key tight. I mean, they're losing a lot of offensive talent.
Big year for Joe Royer, Chico.
Thank you, Bo. So, no, I would say, reasonable top 10, definitely. But top 5, I don't think it'll happen. I mean, we don't know who they're going to get as far as the portal goes. But I would say right now, as we speak, with the losses they have coming, they're in that 7 to 10 range, I think, preseason next year. But we'll see.
Yeah, I wonder too if those wide receivers are going to be feeling some pressure, because this is the school that has earned the reputation as wide receiver U. But now, who's your most experienced receiver next year? Jaden Ballard. What has he done and proven on the field to this point?
I'm surprised that Fleming.
Yeah, I really thought he was going to have a big opportunity this year.
McCord he's just, I think Kyle McCord behind closed doors, my guess would be, and this is where, again, I like Ryan Day, he didn't pull any punches at the beginning. He could have, some coaches in that situation, you want to keep your starter, your presumed starter, it's McCord and whatever. Ryan Day told it like he saw it. He was like, neither of these guys have really done much. And I think Kyle McCord is used to being told, like a lot of these young guys, how great you are over and over and over again. Well, guess what? You didn't do anything to earn it before the season. You had some nice moments this season. And all he said was, there's going to be a competition. I can't promise you anything. Like I said, I just think it's funny and ironic because Urban Meyer, Jim Tressel probably to some degree also, but Urban Meyer definitely, Nick Saban definitely, those guys don't give a shit about, hey, playing time. And their motto is, if you think that you're in a numbers crunch and you're not going to play, then I don't want you anyway because you don't have enough confidence in yourself. And if that's the case, then get out.
Yeah, I think the Day's handling of this and keeping the QB competition open, while it may appear perhaps to McCord as disloyal, I think was completely understandable, completely justified. McCord, at the end of the day, he may have made some big boy throws, but he just did not do enough to get the job done consistently.
All right, we'll take a break. We come back, wrap things up. We got fair or foul, and then the very latest on what's going on for the Browns and the Jaguars. Again, team off today, back on the practice field tomorrow. Learn a lot about Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, and Amari Cooper and all those guys. But we'll take a break right now. Again, fair or foul is on the way. Chico Borman Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back. It is the Chico Borman Show as we wind things down on this Tuesday. Coming up on tomorrow's show, haven't spoken to this guy since we made a little wager. Ohio State, Michigan. I had to download the Michigan fight song, which I have, but I don't know how to use it for my alarm, and I'll have to have Bohm teach me before tomorrow. But Eric Casilius, CBS Sports HQ and proud Michigan alum, will join me, and yeah, he's actually not happy at all with how the committee played this out. And I think it's my guess is it's solely based on the fact that Michigan has to play Alabama. Like, his response to Michigan playing Alabama was the same as the team's response to Michigan playing Alabama. And I don't want to hear any of this. That was just a normal reaction. No, it wasn't. You guys did not think you were playing Alabama. Anyway, but EK will join us tomorrow. Hey, Bohm, I forgot to update you. I did reach out to our buddy, our mutual friend, Booney, Brett Boone.
Oh.
And, because with TV shows, like if I start something or if he starts something, we usually try to, keep in touch. So I have started, I'm actually in the second season of Breaking Bad.
Hey, now.
Like
That's a spectacular show.
And I did not know that was also Bryan Cranston, Dr. Tim Watley.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was Breaking Bad as well.
Oh, yeah.
I watched him with, Your Honor? He's in that one, which I thought was phenomenal. I hope they have another season. I doubt it. But, yeah, Breaking Bad is wild.
It only gets wilder, Chico. You're only 2 seasons in. You have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm like basically to the point where, his wife hasn't had the baby yet. She doesn't know. She suspects something is going on. I know what it is. That Tuco's after him.
Yeah.
No. Now Tuco's dead. I take that back.
Oh.
Yeah, because
is it Gus?
the brother-in-law Hank
Yeah.
shot him.
That's right.
But now they're so yeah. That's where I'm at right now. But very, very good. And I know it's one that's been out for a while. Just never got around to watching it. Very good.
That's a show that I need to revisit because I've only watched it through once when it was actually airing, and I remember watching the finale live and just one of the best shows right up there. A total resurgence for Bryan Cranston. After that, I feel like I've been seeing him all over the place since he starred in that show. A lot of,
he's
drama.
Good. He is very, and it's just so wild because again, being a Seinfeld fanatic, I always remembered Watley, but. Man, he is a good actor.
The other thing, this is a series I didn't finish, and I'll say that it started slow and I didn't really keep up, but Better Call Saul, which is a spinoff of Breaking Bad, based on the lawyer, Saul Goodman.
I didn't know that was a spinoff of that.
That's also an AMC show, just like Breaking Bad, and it's the same world as Breaking Bad, and I heard it gets really good. Michael McKean stars in it.
I've heard of it, definitely. I haven't watched it. All right, well, maybe I'll wait till after I finish Breaking Bad. And
Bob Odenkirk, great, by the way.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right, well, I just figured I'd throw that update out there. Booney was like, well, yeah, I thought you already saw it. I'm like, no, I
About
didn't.
damn time.
Yeah, he was kind of giving me that. But then again, he hadn't seen. What's the one he hadn't seen?
There was a big one. What, Ozark or something?
No, it was the one I watched just before this.
Sopranos.
Sopranos,
Yeah.
Yeah, he hadn't watched it. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That's
all right.
a must-see show.
Just thought I would pass that along, so you'll be getting random texts from me while watching Breaking Bad. It is time on this Tuesday edition of the Chico Borman Show for a little fair or foul.
Let's do it. All right, Chico. I want to start with Dak Prescott, who he's officially signed through next season, but he has a potential out for next year as well. And I want to ask you, because Dak has been playing really well, and I feel like he's been one of the more polarizing quarterbacks in football right now, because there are times where he can be the most efficient and lead one of the most effective offenses in football, and there are other times where it feels like he's slacking a little bit. So I want to ask you, Chico, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, fair or foul, you got to resign Dak Prescott.
Boy, this is, I tell you what, a question that earlier in the year, no way, right? And they made that trade they got Trey Lance, right, on the roster. I mean, if Dak is playing at this level, and he continues to play at this level, you have to stick with him. I'm gonna go fair on that. Now again, it's the Cowboys, so what do they do in the playoffs? And it's Jarrah, so what do they do in the playoffs? But I mean, I did not think, to be totally honest, I did not think Dak was capable of getting back to that form, but he has, and then some. It's been impressive.
Yeah, I am inclined to agree because I think he's playing too well. Like, you can't just let him go. Otherwise, that fan base is going to come with pitchforks after Jerry Jones. So, yeah, we are in concurrence there, Chico. Now, moving on to another player that an organization opted not to hold on to, and this is in basketball, Tyrese Halliburton, who had just a massive performance last night in Indiana, in the Indiana Pacers win. Of course, Halliburton came from Sacramento.
He's a stud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Kings opted to ride with De'Aaron Fox ahead of Tyrese Halliburton. Fair or foul, they chose the wrong guard.
Fair. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is pretty good. He was a Kentucky guy, wasn't he? De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah.
The thing I love about Halliburton is he is such a, when it comes to distributing, if I'm thinking of the right guy, he is so unselfish. So unselfish. A lot of those guys are not like that. He is. But, yeah, I would say fair that they probably picked the wrong guy.
Yeah. I to your point, yeah, I like De'Aaron Fox's game, but I think Halliburton is really establishing himself as one of the elite superstars in this league. He continues to put up huge numbers night in, night out, and he's leading that Indiana Pacers team, and they look like right now, obviously it's only the midseason tournament, but they have to be one of my favorites to win that tournament. With that, I want to move on because you were talking a little bit earlier about, with Nick Shook, about Florida allocating funds to, I guess, remove Alabama from the college football playoffs. Fair or foul, Congress getting involved with the college football playoff selections?
Okay. Foul. And I hope, look, when it comes to how many times has this happened where the NCAA will not be able to, they can't make a decision on what discipline should be, and then they say, well, we need to bring in Congress. This is one, first of all, it's a stupid lawsuit, as much as I hate the decision, and yeah, I think Florida State should be there. But having said that, I mean, think of everything going on in our world, right? Think of starving, homeless, and we're trying to get Congress to devote time to whether Alabama or Florida State should be in the college football playoff. Give me a break. I mean, it kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you. And I love sports, and yeah, I mean, make them as great as possible, but for God's sake, there's got to be a line drawn where it's we have bigger fish to fry right now, and this is not one of them.
Chico, this feels like such a only in Florida thing to me. It's just that ridiculous. And I feel like this is politicians trying to cater to Florida voters.
Well, Ron DeSantis is involved, and
as well as Rick Scott.
Yeah, we know it's I won't go into politics.
Yeah, this is not a political show.
Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show here on the Big Play Sports Network.
All right, Chico. Well, let's move on before we get too political here. I want to go back to the NFL, where that Kansas City Chiefs Green Bay Packers game where the Packers won after what could very well be considered a missed pass interference call on a Hail Mary to end the game for the Chiefs. First off, let me ask you just to get your opinion on where you stand. Fair or foul, refs swallowing their whistles on Hail Marys and giving a less of or more leash on penalties.
I'm gonna be honest. I really struggle with this one because I think with Hail Marys, and I think we all kind of have the same, and I'm Catholic, so I mean, the Hail Mary is, especially with this Friday, Holy Day of Obligation. But anyway, the Hail Mary, we all know it's kind of like anything goes. I mean, unless it's really egregious, but, you also look, and the guy grabs Travis Kelce's right arm. He's only operating with one arm. He can't... how egregious is too egregious? I don't know. So, like, part of me, I really don't want to be an official in that situation. But I would say this, that if you truly, like, take a guy down, or you are, in the case of Travis, like grabbing his arm and leaving him just one arm to make a play, you've got to throw the flag. But I mean, when you're in a crowd like that and there's bumping and shoving and that kind of stuff, I think you've got to let go. But I'm not going to pretend like that's an easy call. It's very, very tough.
Yeah, that is a tough call, and it seemed very blatant on that particular play. And you're right. Like, what's the threshold here? Like, can you be more lenient, but like still throw a flag if it's absolutely like you're totally hindering the play? So I don't know how the NFL will move forward with it, but I feel like that precedent right now is established that they are going to be swallowing their whistles on those plays more often than not. Now, with that, I thought Patrick Mahomes had something very profound to say in terms of his reaction to it. It just his perspective in the locker room after the game. He said, quote, "It is what it is, man. Obviously, the guy was probably a little early, but at the end of the game, they're letting guys play. I'm kind of about that. I'd rather you let the guys play and let the guys win it on the field. It's a hard job, man. When we're in that situation, I can't be wanting a flag. I have to try to go out there and win the game myself and with the rest of my teammates." I thought that was excellent perspective from Patrick Mahomes. Fair or foul, Chico, more players need to embrace that attitude.
Fair. I've said this really since the summer when I saw that documentary on Patrick on Netflix where it was him, Mariota, and Kirk Cousins. That, I always appreciated his talent, but I didn't really get a chance to see him behind the scenes. I'm not going to pretend like now all of a sudden you know what a guy's like, but Patrick Mahomes is a good dude. Like, I like the way he goes about his business. He's a fiery quarterback, but he's very cognizant of, his teammates and doing what's best for the team. And he's very level-headed. I would agree with that. Now, some guys, hey, they're going to be a little more aggressive, and just because you speak out, if you do speak out against it, I don't necessarily have an issue with it. But I think Patrick Mahomes just kind of has more of a level-headed approach to things, which I enjoy.
Yeah, that's totally fair, Chico. That's totally fair to say. Now, I want to move back to college ball. So Ohio State, of course, getting set to take on Mizzou. Go Tigers. And so head coach Eli Drinkowitz, who I actually like a lot. I think he has listening to him in his press conferences, I think he has a lot of wisdom to impart on his players, and he seems like a great coach in my opinion. I thought he took an interesting jab, and I don't think it was a jab at Ohio State, but he was being interviewed by Reese Davis on ESPN.
I saw this.
Yeah, take a listen to this, Chico.
Hey guys, I got a quick phone call. Connor Stallion's beeping in right here. I'm trying to get a few signals here, so I gotta go. But
now, Chico, I just want to. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah.
Fair or foul for Ohio State fans to take offense to that, because I saw some people outraged, like calling it bulletin board material, which I find.
Oh my God.
Yeah, fans will look for anything.
Some fans are idiots. I mean, they're just. Some fans are like the dumbest form of life on the planet. Some, not all. I mean, if you're saying that that's bulletin board, the guy's just bringing levity to a situation that he's having fun. Bulletin board material. I don't believe that they're saying that's bulletin board material. I can't buy that.
Twitter is a dark place, Chico.
I will just say this: like, you know what? These bowl games. What is their, if you don't make the playoff, like, what is their purpose? Like, I have people in Columbus still going, I think Marvin Harrison's going to play in the Cotton Bowl. What are you, nuts? He's not playing in that game. Why would he? Other than, and look, I love as much as anybody the mentality of, hey, my teammates and one more time to, it's just, times have changed. And these bowl games are simply, first of all, you mean to tell me you couldn't find a better, nothing against Missouri, sorry, Edom. If you really cared about the matchups and ratings, why not have, like, Ohio State, Georgia?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It probably would have been ugly for Ohio State, especially with McCord entering the portal.
Yeah.
But how does that not happen? What are we doing
I
here?
mean, you could have at least, and even if it's not Georgia, you could have at least. I mean, See, it sounds bad because Missouri is a good football team. I mean, they are.
They are.
I sound like John Cooper there. They got a real good football team over there. But I don't know. It's like this is just filler. I mean, let's be honest. All the other bowls, it's just filler for ESPN. So after this year, we won't necessarily have to worry as much about it. But, yeah, it's – I just laugh at these people that honestly think Marvin Harrison's going to play in the Cotton Bowl.
I think he's tempted, but just not a smart business move if you're Maserati Marv.
You're taking Maserati Marv on a gravel road
Yeah.
right before he's that's not.
You don't need to do that.
smart. No.
He's already like a top 5 pick for sure, top 3, maybe even number 1 overall. If any receiver ever warranted consideration, it's him.
Yeah. Wow, if ever any. There you go. There's that Bone Buckeye coming through.
He's like, I mean, he's basically
incredible.
what Megatron was back in the day coming out. Like, he was just a guaranteed stud.
Yeah.
With that, I don't know, but I wanted to ask you, this isn't the fair or foul topic, but did you happen to see, like, the mock if it was a 12-team playoff this year?
I saw one of them.
Yeah, I think so. As the rankings are currently slated, Ohio State would be facing off in the first round against Ole Miss.
Another one I would have rather seen in the bowl. I mean, that would have been a good bowl matchup. Anyway, go ahead.
And depending how things played out in that mock 12-team playoff, Ohio State would have had to have had a rematch with the team up north prior to reaching the championship. But whatever. That's a story for another day, maybe next year.
Oh, definitely next year.
Yeah.
Don't even say maybe. It will be next year, yeah.
And I do wonder, like, with the Wolverines, J.J. McCarthy, is he going to go pro? How are they going to replace him, and who is that replacement? Is it that Orgy guy who ran for, like, 20 yards on his
You just
lone?
wanted to say Orgy.
Honestly, I am curious who their replacement
I don't
is going to
think
be.
I don't think he's going to go pro. I really don't.
He should stay, honestly.
I've heard some people say he's a lock first rounder, and I don't. I mean, again, we're back to that whole argument about upside and potential, and I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. He is, but I think he could be in a position next year, minus Blake Corum, where he's throwing the ball more. I would think that's going to raise his stock. I don't agree with some assessments that he's a lock, a first round lock in the draft if he comes out.
I do agree with you, but let me ask you this then, Chico. Fair or foul, J.J. McCarthy played like a first rounder against Ohio State.
No.
He had some big boy throws.
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't like light him up.
True.
I mean, you know, when you're talking like first rounder, he looked good. I mean, if he comes out like, you know, I would view him second or third, maybe, but first round. I mean, first round's pretty lofty.
Yeah.
Especially
in this quarterback class, you're going to have a lot of guys that are going to be coveted ahead of him.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but here's what I think his decision will be based on. Is Harbaugh back? If Harbaugh's back, I think JJ's back. If Harbaugh's not back, I don't think JJ's back.
And that'll do it for today's Fair or Foul.
All right. That'll do it for today's program. Damn it. All right. Thanks to Nick Shook. We had a great time at the Bold Ball Breakdown, getting ready for the Jacksonville Jaguars again. Jaguars. Jags could very well be without Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. Report today while we were on the air that Christian Kirk's is not just a groin injury, it's a core muscle injury, may need surgery. He would be out. Trevor Lawrence, still amazed. No golf cart in sight. No cart, period, anywhere.
I had that on Fair or Foul if you didn't bring it up. I just I didn't understand it. What's going on?
Isn't that like, I would think like when you run down a checklist of like what has to be on a sideline or what, like, okay, yeah, we got the blue tent. We got our first aid kit. We need to have a cart. Like,
interestingly, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but I heard I forget what player it was that used to play, but they don't want to see the carts before the game, so they purposefully hide it like away from where the players come out.
I can see
because you don't want to think about it, right? You don't want to think
Superstitious,
about that thing being brought out. But like to not have it at all, and then for that slow walk back to the locker
it's
room,
almost like you're just screaming from the mountain, walk it off.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
seeing
Get in the
Trevor's face
cart.
too. Trevor's face, like he looked numb to the whole thing, and
Yeah.
just like, oh, it was hard to see that walk back, just like trying to comprehend the feelings, the emotions coming over him.
No tears coming from Browns fans, though, nor should there be as they get ready for, we think it'll probably be C.J. Beathard, but we'll wait on Trevor Lawrence. He's a tough guy. All right, so that's going to do it. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Again, Eric Casilius will join us, CBS Sports HQ. What else going on tomorrow? Browns obviously back on the practice field. That'll tell us a little bit, we think, about where certain guys are, Miles and Denzel. I doubt Miles would practice anyway, but get a better understanding there. And the Cavs are back in action as they take on the Orlando Magic. And by the way, Orlando has won 9 of their last 10 games.
Look out!
Yeah, they're playing some great basketball. So that'll be at home, by the way. So we'll do all of that tomorrow as well. All right, thanks to Michael Bohm, all of you out there, from all of us here at Big Play Sports. I'm Mike Chico Borman. Until tomorrow at noon, folks, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. See you.